Who is Hollywood's big three equivalent? And big three mean like you would never in a million years think that they would ever declare bankruptcy. It took 70 years from the beginning of the decentralization of the automobile industry for Detroit to declare bankruptcy. But can the West Coast learn from what Detroit has gone through?
S&P Global just downgraded Warner Brothers Discovery to junk status, a brutal blow.
So many parallels between Detroit and Hollywood. In Detroit, there were thousands of car companies in the early 1900s that essentially just condensed into General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, the big three. They made Detroit one of the richest places in the world. Back to Hollywood. You know, studios take up enormous real estate. And the studio that made Matrix and Joker is now filing bankruptcy. In 2008, I worked for the New York Times covering the auto crisis, where General Motors and Chrysler ended up both declaring bankruptcy 5 years before the city did. Bankruptcy. So much has to happen in a major company to get to that point. But Detroit declaring bankruptcy is not a municipal microscope. It's a lens on our nation. The car factories in Detroit are kind of laid out like the landscape of Hollywood. Lots of factories, lots of studios. The car factories that once drove Detroit's economy and for the larger part America's economy are largely abandoned. Exploring them was just insane. I have a lot of that content in my film Resurgo. Packard, AMC, incredible companies that cranked out the hits, just like Ocean's 11 and Matrix.
You were quoted as saying the age of the abandonment narrative is over.
But instead of silver screen, it was chrome and steel. And just like how studios are following incentives, so did car factories. From 1950 to 1990, car factories kind of spread it out across the United States. Should I go into AI right now? I mean, there's so much already packed into this, but yeah, one story. Millions of people moved to Detroit for a $5 workday. What became the birth of the middle class and the American dream, a home and a car. Detroit began to decentralize when you didn't need as many workers and automation started taking shape. So automation condensed the amount of workers. AI right now is almost doing the same thing, but on a much bigger scale. Everything I'm talking about is just thoughts, but I'm inside the film industry, and every time I'm on a set from Florida to Georgia to Detroit, it's the same conversation. What's happening in our industry? Producer Patrick is covering Hollywood and the Hollywood film scene incredibly. And his information, along with what I'm seeing nationally, are just these breadcrumbs that on this side of the Detroit disinvestment cycle, just looks like these chess pieces are coming together. And maybe all these stories can do something to help.